Looks like we are live on Facebook. We'll give it just a minute for folks to join. Who just joined the conference call there?
Paulette.
Hey, Paulette.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning. Morning.
All right, we are live on Facebook, and we do have some folks joining there. And we'll give it just a little bit more time for them to join on. Hey, good morning, Janice. Glad you could join. If you're on the Facebook feed, pipe in the comments there. Let us know that you're with us this morning. It's good to see everyone coming on. Hey, good morning, Keith. Several others coming in. We'll give it just a little bit more time here, and then we'll be. Hey, Jerry Ann. Hey, good morning. Looks like Barbara piped in on the conference call. Who just joined us on the conference call as well?
Frank and Diana.
Hey, Frank and Diana.
Separately.
All right. And then we have Leanne and Bonnie Jones, Cliff, Bradley, Wanda Lee. Good morning, everybody. And David's on as well. David and Wanda, good morning. All right, I know there's several others joining us on Facebook. Glad you all could make it. We'll go ahead and get started this morning. We're continuing up and wrapping up our study in Song of Songs. We're going to be looking at chapter 5. Today we'll wrap up in Song of Songs, and then next week we're going to start a study in Isaiah. So we're looking forward to getting into some Isaiah and some prophecy. One of my passions. It's going to be an interesting study for us to get in together as we start down that path, starting next week as well. So today in Song of Songs, chapter 5, we're going to be looking at verses 6 through 16. If you'd like to turn in your Bible or open that up or scroll over to it, it'd be great for you to be able to join us. Hi, Kathy and Otis. Welcome. So thanks to those of you who have been praying for us and for Matthew. Matthew has recovered from his bout with COVID, so we're thankful for that. He has all of his symptoms are gone. He's even got his sense of taste and smell essentially back. So we're so thankful for that. We had a lot of quarantine here at the house. A lot of mask wearing going on inside the house for a couple of weeks, and Lysol and Clorox were freely flowing around this place. But thankfully, Sugar and Sam both tested negative. None of the rest of us are showing any symptoms. So it looks like for us, we have escaped this piece of it, and we're thankful for that. And more than anything, we know that it was due to all the prayers that were going up as God put his hedge of protection around us here at home. So thank you all for those prayers and for sharing all the well wishes by text and by Facebook message and the cards that we got and all that. Thank you for reaching out and ministering to us in that way. And then several other folks who reached out in other ways. We appreciate that so much. So today we're looking at return on relationship. In the business world, managers are often concerned with the concept of return on investment. Oftentimes you'll hear managers and business people talk about ROI. This is a measure of how much you're getting in return for what you put into a product or service or investment. The idea is to maximize your ROI. And Bonnie and Pat have joined. Hey, good morning. That's the idea. Maximize your ROI. That is, what you put into a product or service or investment should result in more of a return to you as you put in to what you are doing with that product or investment or service. When we're young, we tend to invest in things like diplomas, certifications, careers, vehicles, houses, all those various things. If we have enough resources, we might also make investments in fitness center memberships, golf clubs, other things of that nature. But as we get older, we start to get different kinds of investments on our mind. We're inclined to invest more in mutual funds or retirement plans. Our needs change across time, and so do our perspectives on what matters the most. Whether we're young and old, however, we're wise when we see the value of investing in relationships, beginning with our relationship with God. There's a lot of things that the world today will tell you to invest in. Invest in this, invest in that, you put in what you get out. And it's so true. But we value our investment in relationships more than anything else. When we do that, we're going to get a return on relationship that far outweighs any investments that we can make in worldly things. A key component of a good ROI is the principle of good deposits. That is, the quality of regular, reliable, and right deposits can greatly impact the quality of your return on investment. And in today's study, we're going to take this concept of return on investment and examine it from a standpoint of relationships. How can you maximize your return on relationship? Well, it all starts with the quality of your deposits. So, in order to understand what we're going to get out of the context of our study today, it's important to understand the background of where we got to from when we first started last week in Song of Songs, all the way up to this point in Song of Songs chapter 5. The man and the woman we see in this poem are now married, and they're learning to live together as they grow in their relationship as husband and wife. Early on in their marriage, they demonstrated the value of investing in each other instead of giving up on one another when they faced conflict. They resolved their conflict and they affirmed each other and their love for each other in their relationship. The woman describes him in loving ways that underscore her love for him. And he told her that he had never seen anyone as beautiful as she. Her physical appearance contributed to her beauty, but so did her strength of character that made her a virtuous woman. We see that in Song of Songs 5:2 all the way through 6:13. The man then puts his wife on his chariot one day and rides through the city with her so that everyone could see her beauty. He spoke privately with her about her beauty as well. He described her with word pictures that captures the depth of his love for her and his longing to be with her. And in response, she assured him of her absolute confidence in him. Once more, she affirmed that their exclusive marriage bond involved only the two of them. They were faithful totally and completely to each other. Earlier, she had expressed her certainty that the two of them had belonged together, and they were completely committed to each other, and their mutual commitment allowed them to give themselves to each other as husband and wife without any reservation whatsoever and with total and complete trust one for the other. And because of her trust in the love they shared, she took the initiative to strengthen their marriage by getting him away from home for a little while. She invited him to leave the city and take a trip with her to a location far away from his work, from his labor. Has anybody ever taken a vacation and you worked on that vacation? I'm guilty of doing that. Hello. This is one of those examples of where she encouraged him to get away, just the two of them, leave work where it needs to be at work, and get away and enjoy quality family time together. And although that she cherished the private moments that she had with him, she also longed for the opportunity for them to spend time together, just the two of them, without any other distractions. And most of all, she expresses in chapter 7 through 8 her desire of wanting him to be with her always. Well, toward the end of this poem, the man and the woman appeared together again in his chariot. She leaned on him as they made their way into the city. She talked with him about her desire for him to keep her in his heart. Then she described the resilience, the power of their love together. Nothing could stop their love. She expresses that. And like a fire, it consumed everything in its flames. Just as her husband owned vineyards, she owned her body and had given it completely and totally over to him. How wonderful it is that they express those relationships together in that way. Well, the first thing we see here in Song of Songs, chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, is the deposit of companionship. We're talking about return on relationship, and it all depends on the quality of your deposit. Here's the first deposit, the deposit of companionship. Let's read chapter 5, starting with verse 6. I opened up for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. We start here with what appears to be a dream. Earlier, the woman had talked about a dream in which she had searched for the man, the love of her life. We talked about that a little bit in our last study in chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Now she recalls another dream in which she looks for her beloved, who was now her husband. She wanted him and she needed him, but he was not there. Her heart broke over his apparently mysterious and sudden departure. Frantically in her dream, she started to look for him everywhere, but she did not find him. She called out his name in the hope that he would return, but he did not answer. Her heart yearned to hear his voice when she called to him, and the silence that came in response only added to her despair. She didn't hear from him, and he did not come back to her in this dream. The dream so far painted a picture of a spouse who felt as if she had been deserted. She was left by herself in the sense that he wasn't physically there with her. She looked forward to being with him once more. His continued physical absence only added more pain to her broken heart. However, the picture also shows the pain that comes from being deserted emotionally. In their marriage, they needed one another's physical presence, but they also needed the emotional support one for the other. With it, they could look forward to growing together in a mutually fulfilling relationship. But without it, the spouse would feel abandoned. Well, look at verse 7 there. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they took away my cloak, those watchmen of the walls. She continues on in her dream here. The description that she gives shows a very difficult situation that she comes into. She encounters guards as she goes into the city in search of her true love who had disappeared. She also had encounters with guards in a dream she'd had before they were married, back in chapter 3, verse 3. We talked about that in our last study. In her telling of this dream that she had after her wedding, she describes the cruelty of the guards that she encounters. Once they found her, they did not try to help her. Instead, they beat her, leaving her with painful wounds, and they even took her cloak away from her. The beating she endured served as a figurative way that she could use to describe the deep emotional pain that she felt over the mysterious departure of her true love. His disappearance had left her wounded by the disappointment, the despair, the confusion, and perhaps even the regret of him not being there when she needed him. Beyond being left alone with her husband, this broke her heart. Not being able to find him left her brokenhearted, beat up, and in severe agony. Along with the wounds, the watchmen of the wall there exposed her to a painful kind of disgrace. For a young woman back then, they took away her cloak, a garment that mattered quite a bit to her. Her cloak covered her, and without it, she would be left exposed. In the days of the Old Testament, a woman covered herself with a cloak, a shawl, or a veil as a gesture of modesty as well as protection from the harsh sun. In her dreams, she portrays vividly the pain that she has of that spouse not being there for her when she needed him. It left her exposed. It left her wounded. It left her feeling alone. Look at verse 8. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my beloved, what will you tell him? Tell him I am faint with love. So then when she seeks the help of the daughters of Jerusalem, she acknowledges her eagerness to rejoin her husband. She charges them with tasking them to help her find him and to send a message to him to say, tell him that I do still love him. The urgency of her plea suggested the depth of her desire to reconcile with him. Neither her wounded heart nor the torment she suffered at the hands of the guards could persuade her to give up on him. She would never be able to think about getting on with her life without him because she loved him so dearly. She wanted him to be present. 6 times in this chapter, she referred to him as her love. He was the centerpiece of her life, and nothing or no one could compare to him. She had given herself completely to him, and her deep affection for him would not disintegrate. In other words, she was faint with love and would only be cured by the return of her husband. Keith says in life, visualize a stop sign as a reminder to pause and think before reacting. That's a great point there, Keith. It's great advice. Stop, pause, and think before reacting. So one of the things that we see here is this painful cry of the woman sheds light on the need for couples to work together at their marriage relationship by being present for each other, being present physically, being present emotionally, being there for each other. Marriages can get into trouble when spouses are distant from each other emotionally, even though they're present physically. Being intentional about being there for each other makes a marriage stronger. That's the deposit of companionship. And this applies not only to marriage, but to any other relationship you have. Friendly relationships, work relationships, whatever relationships you have. If you have the deposit of companionship, being there for someone, being present for them, being a friend, being a brother, being a spouse, what you get into the relationship to see that return on relationship grow can only be compounded when you have a good quality deposit of companionship. It's so easy for things in the world today to take us away from being companions to others in our lives. There's so much input that we can get that takes us away. And even as we pursue climbing the corporate ladder or whatever else that we're trying to accomplish in our lives, we can find ourselves pursuing other things other than being a good quality companion for someone else. Don't let your career pursuits, and don't let your personal pursuits, and don't let your entertainment pursuits take away from the quality of the deposit that you have to be a companion in the relationship of someone else. Now, we not only have in this area here, in this whole passage that we've talked about, not only the deposit of companionship, but there's another one starting with verse 9 here, and that is the deposit of remembrance. The deposit of remembrance. Let's start looking at verse 9. How is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others, that you so charge us? In her dream, she's been talking to her friends, these women, trying to help her find her beloved. And they come back with these questions that we have. How is he better than others? And how is he better than others that you would charge us to go help you find him and to tell him that you love him? We would expect the women of Jerusalem to carry out the woman's order. After all, she's married to Solomon, which makes her the queen. So you would anticipate that they would say, yes, your majesty, and off they would go. But instead, they give a response that keeps in line with their role so far in this poem. Instead of accommodating her, they ask her to tell them why her true love is better than any other man. With their question of value, there's a value that's given here. And it's an issue that goes along to be addressed in marriage relationships that we have to deal with. It's a valid question. It's a valid issue. The young women of Jerusalem have a strategic moment about this poem in this question. And at the outset of the poem, the woman introduced herself to them, and that's in chapter 1, verse 5. She urges them 3 times to wait until the right time before they awaken love. We saw that. We talked about that last week in chapter 2, verse 7, chapter 3, verse 5, and then again looking forward into chapter 8 and verse 4. Special attention had been given as she interacted with them to decorating Solomon's carriage for their wedding day. And the young women of Jerusalem had lovingly woven together a cloth that covered the couch in chapter 3 and verse 10. The woman even asked the young women to send a message to her true love here in chapter 5 and verse 8. And she shared with them that her true love was also, here's the important word, her friend. Chapter 5, verse 16. I've said this many times, and I don't know that I could give you any better advice in terms of having a strong marriage relationship. And the Bible talks about it like this. You should not have any friend in your life who is closer to you than your spouse. And I'm not talking about the Lord Jesus here. I'm talking about a physical friend on this earth. Husband, you should not be confiding things in other people, especially other women, that you would not confide into your wife. And wife, you should not be confiding in anything, in any other man or any other woman in your life that you would not confide in with your husband. They should be your best friend. And if you're sharing something with someone else that you cannot share with your spouse, you are doing the wrong thing and you're heading down a dangerous road. She confides in them with the ladies here in Song of Songs that her spouse is her friend. Chapter 5, verse 16. The young women responded then by listening and by assisting her. But in this verse, however, they responded differently. She directed them to send a message to her true love that she was lovesick for him. They replied by asking her a probing question that would prompt her to spend more time in reflection. Reflecting on her answer would require her to go back to the day when she met him and the time they spent together since then. It would also take her back to their wedding day and the night that followed. But most likely it would direct her to the moment in which she devoted herself to him alone. Her exclusive commitment to him was unwavering in her love in which she devoted herself to him alone. Her exclusive commitment to him was shown in that. It was shown in the way that she gave herself totally and completely to him. The answer to such questions can only be found in these commitments, these foundational commitments that husband and wife make to each other in marriage. These commitments serve as the foundation of the couple's relationship. And the strength of that marriage depends on the willingness of the couple to invest in those commitments for the rest of their lives. And for that reason, the vows repeated on the wedding day serve as much more than ceremonial statements that have little more than sentimental value. They testify that the couple will make investments in their marriage as long as they live. I've known of some people to get their vows framed and put them up in their house. I've known some that would go back and revisit them every so often. I was listening to an account not too long ago of a couple that on their anniversary every year would recite their vows to each other every year for as long as they stay married. It's important to have a deposit of remembrance, to go back and remember what it is that drew you together, what it is that you first saw in your spouse, what it is that caused you to say, oh, this is where I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. It's important to have moments of remembrance. Christian couples demonstrate their investment in each other by staying faithful to one another. Nothing or no one should be able to tear apart a man and a woman who have given themselves and their marriage to the Lord. A commitment to faithfulness might be taken for granted as long as no challenges or temptations wedged in to the couple's relationship. But when these challenges come along, their commitment to each other and remembering those commitments will help bring them through those times of temptation and turmoil and trial. Now, this not only applies to marriage, it applies to any relationship you have. It's important to go back and have moments of remembrance. Hey, man, do you remember when we did this or that or the other and such a good time that we had? I have some dear friends that I grew up with, some of the best friends that I've ever had. We still, thanks to the technology of Facebook, are able to stay in contact. And it's so neat to be able to go back and remember some of the good times that we had together growing up and say, hey, man, do you remember when we hiked up into the mountains and went into that cave and all the things that we used to do? A deposit of remembrance also requires that you're building memories. What kind of memories are you building with those who are important in your life? What kind of memories are you building with your family, with your friends, those who are important to you? To have a good quality deposit of remembrance not only means that you have good quality memories, but it also means that you're building good quality memories today. Make a commitment to have a good deposit of remembrance. So we saw the deposit of companionship, the deposit of remembrance, and here's the last one, the deposit of celebration. Let's look at Song of Songs, chapter 5, verses 10 through 16, starting with verse 10. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, melted like jewels. The woman declares to the young women in response to their question that she loved the man. And she demonstrates her love with an eagerness to find him. And she goes on to tell them what she saw in him. She started with the way that she looked way back before he was her husband, starting back when they first started to court each other. We like to use that phrase back in the country, they're courters. Back when they started to be courters, she considered him to be radiant and ruddy. In her eyes, he was extremely handsome. She added that he was an outstanding man who had distinguished himself above 10,000 other men. And then, starting from his head, she paints a picture of him with words that selects a heart that's full of love. She notes that his head gleams like the purest gold. That implies that he was tanned or that he was priceless to her. His hair was wavy and black. It gave the indication that he was robust and energetic, not weak or weary. And she provided a number of rich details as she talked about his eyes. The details gave impressions that she may lost herself in her eyes many times throughout their relationship, how she got lost in his eyes. His eyes are like doves by water streams, she said, washed in milk, melted like jewels. They captivated her because she loved him so much. In her comparison here, she gave every evidence that that the eyes not only were ministering to her, but that they were also alert, like doves, always watching and always looking for things to do and to take care of for her. She thought, as she looked at his eyes, that they were like precious jewels that had been mounted perfectly on a valuable ring or a necklace. Well, now let's look at verses 13 through 16. His cheeks are like beds of spice yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with topaz. His body is like polished ivory decorated with lapis lazuli. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedars. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my, there's that word again, friend, daughters of Jerusalem. When she compared his cheeks to beds of spice, she may have been referring to the fragrance of his cologne. Every time that he put it on his cheeks, this lovely scent resembled mounds of sweet smelling herbs to her. In this part of her description, she begins by bringing up more than just the way that he looked. She flavors her observation with her sense of smell and her sense of taste, and that's particularly noticeable as she describes his lips there. She compares them with lilies, but not necessarily because of their color. Lilies were white, and his lips definitely would have been red. Most likely, the comparison had to do with the attractiveness of his lips. Lilies were thought to be perfectly beautiful. She went on to say that his lips dripped myrrh, a fragrant spice that dripped from the bark of a bush grown in Arabia. Myrrh was used in perfumes and in oils of anointing. The man that she loved had strong, well-shaped arms and had the value and appearance of gold, perhaps because they were well tanned. She refers to a beryl and topaz here. They were precious stones that resembled an emerald. The Lord commanded Moses to place beryl on the breastplates of the high priest. And when she mentions his body, she may have been referring also to his abdomen. She talks about polished ivory that's hard and smooth like ivory is. And lapis lazuli was a mixture of minerals that had the blue-green color of sapphire. The woman added that the strong legs of her true love reminded her of pillars of marble. The cedars of Lebanon were well known for their towering beauty as they stood majestically on the mountains there. The scene served well to portray the presence of the man she loved. And Otis just typed in there a successful marriage encompasses intimacy, fidelity, and emotional connection. Yes, Otis, so true. Thanks for sharing that, brother. When she said that his mouth was sweetness, she may have been referring, and most likely referring there, to his kisses. Or because she also could have been implying that what he said to her was sweet. So what we're talking about here is, when's the last time that you talked about the things that are so good about those who are important in your life? Husband, when's the last time that you complimented your spouse? When's the last time you looked at your wife and said, "You look beautiful today. You look just as beautiful today as the first day that I saw you"? Wife, when's the last time that you looked at your husband and said, "I love you just as much today as I did the first day that we pledged our ending love to each other"? And when's the last time that you found something good to say about your spouse? And this also applies to any relationship you have. It's important that what comes out of our mouth are things that are uplifting and building up to other people, not things to tear them down or to find faults with them. You can find fault with anybody, no matter how perfect they may seem to be. You can find faults with them. Don't be a fault finder, but instead be someone who lifts others up, especially your husband or your wife, your children, brother, sister, mother, father, friends, all those in your relationship. In other words, celebrate them for who they are, for what they do, and for the good things that you see in them. That's a good deposit of celebration. Celebrating the things that you appreciate and the things that you love about those that God has put in your life. You get out of your relationships what you put in. So if you want to have a good return on relationship, you need to have good deposits. You need to have the deposit of companionship, a good deposit. You need to have the deposit of remembrance, a solid deposit. And you need to have the deposit of celebration. When you have those kinds of deposits in your relationships, you will have a good return on relationship. Thank you so much for joining today. I pray the Lord will bless this study to your heart as he did to mine. And I pray that you would be able to use it to strengthen your relationships and that you would enjoy a good quality return on relationship. Encourage you to tune in at 11 o'clock for our live stream today. Pray for Sugar and Sam and the band and the media team as they lead, and for Pastor Mike as he brings the message to us from the Word. Thank you so much for joining today. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. And until next week, have a good return on relationship. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.